Welcome, everyone, and welcome back, Commissioner Abraham. We're glad you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to jump in because we have some pretty special presentations tonight from someone very special far away who's on that camera right there staring at me. All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham.
Present.
Commissioner Holland.
Present.
Commissioner Rhodes.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Mayor Harless.
Present. Commissioner Holland, you have an invocation for us, please? If you'll stand with us.
Dear Lord, thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our city. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Give us a spirit of service. Help us see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us and to treat all persons with the reverence they deserve. We seek a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, and the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement. Amen.
Thank you. Amen. If you'll join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. You may be seated. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None here.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so tonight we have a very special guest. If you all remember, Mark Bryant and his law partners came to us a couple weeks ago talking about some litigation opportunities for the opioid crisis. And we decided that it would be really important for us to get some good background information about what's happening in Kentucky specifically. So Mark had a connection for us in Dr. Chang, and he's 8-hour drive away. And so instead of asking him to spend all of his time driving, we're going to call him up on Skype, and he's going to give us a presentation tonight on what he has been up to at the University of Kentucky. So welcome, Dr. Chang.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I hope everybody can hear me okay.
We can.
Great. I apologize a little bit. I'm not used to this video chat thing. My kid can probably do it better. And I will say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag is probably a first for me to do it sort of over the internet. That was great. So let me, you should have a handout with you that looks like this.
Yep.
Okay, so there are some graphs in there. We're very techy right now, but Stephen and I couldn't quite figure out how to do this, so I can do a PowerPoint for you. Maybe next time, but so I'll ask you to flip the pages with me if you don't mind. But first, I want to frame the problem just a little bit. I think we're all here because we know it's a large problem for our country, and particularly in Appalachia. This is clearly an issue where, on average, 115 Americans die every day from opioid overdose, and if you convert that to minutes, it's about every 12 minutes. Now, you may have heard our governor talk about every 4 minutes, and that's because we're such a hotbed, and it's such a crisis for us. And what you probably ought to know, and this is sort of where I focus, is that 75% of illicit opioid began with a straightforward, honest-to-goodness prescribed opioid prescription from a physician like me. And we can sort of point fingers, and which is what we've been doing for about the last few years. It was the pharmaceutical company's fault. It was the fact that we don't have education. It's the nurse's fault. It's the doctor's fault. I think we're all in it. It's not just the lawmakers. It's not just us. We're all in it. So what I want to do is move past it. Let's get past it, and let's find some solutions. So on your first page was our introduction, and on the bottom you see a graphic here about sort of 3 main ways of misuse, opioid misuse reduction. And I sort of want to frame the problem in simple terms. So there's a prevention piece, a treatment piece, and a harm reduction piece. I'll explain that a little bit. the prevention piece is the one that makes the most sense to me, and I'll focus most of my time on. And it is where I focus most of my energy on, which is how do we stop the spigot? How do we slow it down? How do we get less people addicted to opioids? Okay. And then there's a treatment piece, which is really more for our patients who, through maybe some genetic predisposition, maybe some economic issues, maybe whatever, they're addicted to opioids. And how do we help these patients? And then finally, there's a little piece of, not a little, there's a piece of harm reduction that I'm involved in some, which is the overdose death. How do we get naloxone, Narcan, in the hands of patients and families so that for the addicted patient, or maybe for the innocent teenager who is just happens to have found a bottle of pills that's laying around and overtook too many of them, how do we reduce that? Now there are other pieces to it too. Hepatitis C, as you probably know, it's a huge problem in our state. HIV, less so, but clearly a problem related. All right, so if you flip to the next page, titled Opioid Stewardship at UK Healthcare, it just introduces, I'm not going to read this, it introduces some of the concept of opioid stewardship. Now, the Joint Commission, which certifies, as you know, all the hospitals, and I know you've got 2 great hospitals in your city, they're onto this too, because the Joint Commission now says for every healthcare system should have an opioid stewardship committee. And as we go through this presentation, I think we'll start understanding what opioid stewardship really means. And if at the end of my presentation it's still confusing to you, we'll go to Q&A, and I haven't done a good job. Now the next page, it says Opioid Reduction Pilot Trauma 2014. So let me tell you a little story on how a trauma surgeon, that's who I am, got involved in this. I was a trauma surgeon, 2013, about 10 years out from practice, and I keep seeing the same patient back in our clinic after we treated his rib fracture and liver laceration. 20-some years old, family, son of a working family. In fact, one of the parents is a healthcare provider, a nurse, I believe, in a nearby hospital. And he keeps coming back, and I guess suspicious. So I pulled a Casper. You guys know what a Casper is? Okay. So I pulled a Casper, which is this, state registry of what the patient has received on this particular patient. Back then, Casper wasn't mandatory, so and the system was slow. It took us 30 minutes just to get a report. But when I got it, I almost fell off my chair. Between myself, a partner, and another physician, another system, 3-4 of us gave him about 1,000 pills in a span of 4 weeks. 1,000, over 1,000. And I said to the guy, surely you're not taking all of these, because if you did, you should be dead. And so we drug tested him. He did test positive, so he was taking some. But I suspect he was diverting, which is just a fancy way of selling it as well. So that afternoon, we kept him in our clinic, got a drug counselor, and we were fortunate we already had that resource. And we got him hooked up with some ambulatory help as well. So, but that was really sort of the light bulb moment for me to say, okay, we're creating addicts, if you will. We're responsible too. Sure, the pharmaceutical may be false advertised and this and that, but in the end, it was me who signed that prescription. So I got my partners together and I said, okay, we've got to do something differently. And this is sort of this funny looking triangle thing. Let me explain a little bit. So prior to 2013 on the trauma service, and really on any service, when the patient comes in with pain, we start them with short-acting IV morphine. If that doesn't work, or when we convert them to short-acting oral pain medicine. And that's sort of your Percocets, Lortabs. If that still doesn't work, and we increase the dose already, we go, we need to add something as a baseline. So there's a continuous sort of a level of pain control. And that's your MS-Con. If that doesn't work, we then go, well, maybe we ought to add like a Toradol shot or a high-dose ibuprofen. Advil, and maybe some Tylenol. And if that doesn't work, we'll add some muscle relaxants or some nerve acting agents or clonidine. So if you build your pyramid up that way, when the patient tapers down, we always stop the last one that we added. So the last one that got added is the first one that comes on. So guess what? Patients are going home with Percocet because we don't ever get them off completely before they go home. You know how it is nowadays. And what I said to the guys and the gal was, okay, this is all backwards. What we're going to do is we're not going to add an opioid on any one of our patients unless they have something that's non-addictive on board already. So unless we have ibuprofen or Tylenol on board, then we are not going to add opioids. So the foundation becomes the Advil and Tylenol. And then we add something else. We add the muscle relaxant, the clonidine, and then finally we add the pain medicine, the traditional opioid. So that's what we did. So if you flip a page, what we did was we did a study. We did the before and after. Okay, so 2013 was before, 2014 we tinkered with it, in 2015 we looked at it again. About 489 patients before, 424 patients after. And what you see on the far left, the dark blue is overall, the higher graph. The overall, I don't know if you print it in color, but the tall graph is before 2013, and then the light is 2015. So we reduced the amount of opioid by about half, just by this simple switch. But what we also saw is that if it only works on patients who are not on opioid when they came into our system. So if you're a trauma patient and you're already taking 6 Percocets a day, this protocol did not work for you. But if you're a trauma patient, let's say I get banged up, I get into a car accident, I come in, I'm not on any opioid, this works for me. And what we also saw is on the bottom half of the page, the number of patients who got 0 opioid to go home with went up, and the number of patients that went home on extended release, that's your MS-CON, went down dramatically. And I would bet if we graph this out, you would see that come to about 0, because that's about where we are. Now, what I don't have in here is we were also able to show that the naloxone, Narcan rescue drug in the hospital decreased dramatically, and the pain score, the maximum pain score before and after, there was no change, and the average pain score was no change. And how do we get that to work? Well, a lot of people say, well, if you take away the pain medicine, the pain pills, people aren't going to be happy. Well, that's not true. What I found is that when I did this, and we still do it today, the patients appreciate us spending an extra 5 minutes talking to them about their pain and how we are designing a combination. Multimodal is the catchphrase now. Back then we just call it combination of different kind of pain control specific to the patient's problem. Percocet is a good drug. It works on every kind of pain. But because it was so good and so easy to use, we just used 5 milligrams. If it didn't work, we go to 7.5 and then we go to 10. But those days are over. Any comments or questions at this point? Okay.
Wait, I do have a question, actually.
Oh, please.
How do we know if, our local hospitals have signed on to this sort of protocol?
I don't know. I'm happy to talk to your local hospitals. And it really takes, and I'll get to it a little bit. So back in 2013, that's a good segue to my next segment, actually. So back in 2015, when we said this works on the trauma population, I happened to also change job to my current role, which is our chief medical officer. And I thought, well, can I bring a housewife? If this worked on the toughest group of patients, they came in, didn't expect to be hurt. They have no preparation whatsoever, and yet it worked. So why don't we try and see if we can work on everybody? So, but before we did it, we wanted to know what the barriers are. So we asked some questions, sent out a survey to all of our prescribers, and we said, and pharmacists, and we said, why do you, we asked them all the questions, do you think prescribing opioid is a bad thing? Do you think this is risky? Do you think this is a risk to society? They all say yes. And then the next question was, well, if it's so bad, if you think it's so bad, then why are we still prescribing? So why do you prescribe, right? So those are the sort of the next set of questions that we asked. And we said, why do you feel pressure to prescribe? Where are you getting the pressure? And it's interesting. You look at this, the patients are pressuring the physicians to prescribe. The expectation is different. And then our staff, so our nurses are saying, hey, we need to, so-and-so has pain, we need to give them more Percocet, higher dose. And then the bottom one says, I feel pressure to prescribe on discharge. So this is when we actually give them a prescription. Because what? Because we want to facilitate discharge. Here's a prescription. It's the same you're on now. You're going to be fine going home. Well, and also maybe because the physician doesn't want to get a phone call at 2 a.m. because the patient ran out of, pain pills. There is a high spike there that says no pressure. We were a little surprised, and then we later found out these are our pharmacists. They don't prescribe, so there's no pressure. But I show you all this because I think for us to really systematically approach this, we really have to understand where the pressure points are and how to tackle this. Okay, so we've been working on this a little bit, and let me show you our results, and then I'll tell you how we did it. The next slide is institution-wide metrics. So we established an Office of Opioid Safety. Right now, an office of 1 and some volunteers, and our director is a pharmacist. And really, ever since we put him to work, you can see the peak in January, as just last 2 months ago. We've had our highest opioid-free day. So these are inpatients who don't have any opioids. And you might say, well, that's a fluke. But the bottom one that says patients per day receiving greater than 90 MME. MME is morphine milligram equivalent. So 90 and above is considered dangerous, and we're at our lowest yet. Next page: percent of patients discharged with no opioid, highest ever, and percent of patients discharged with both an opioid or a benzodiazepine, which is your Valium. The two of them combined is a really bad combination, lowest ever. So, and then the last slide, it just looked at the pain metrics, just to demonstrate that despite all these reduction in opioid, really no change in pain scores, okay? Now, how did we do it? We did it by education, and it's a slow process. It's not going to be successful overnight. And we do it multi-pronged. It's really educating the physicians, the nurses, and the patients. And I'll start with the patients. There are two things. One, we could do a patient education in clinic before they come into the system for elective surgery. So right now we're launching an initiative identifying the right operations that can be done or should be done without any opioid. So what we're calling opioid-free operations. So these would be your thyroid, parathyroid resection, maybe a breast biopsy, maybe laparoscopic gallbladder surgery, maybe inguinal hernia repair, sports joint type of thing, a scope. Who else do we have on board? GYN, simple GYN procedures. A lot of the ambulatory surgery. The law now says 3 days or less, House Bill 333, which I supported and testified for it in Frankfurt. But that was a year or two ago, but now we're really sort of evolving our thinking. Why stop at 3 days of pills? Why don't we go to zero? There are operations where if you set it up with the patient up front and then the patients have the clear expectation, I think we can get to zero. And if we don't get to zero and we get to 2 pills, we've won. The other thing is on the patients that we didn't have a chance to set that, to talk about it on an ambulatory setting, I think it's important to set the expectation with the patient. And that's what we did with the trauma group. They didn't know they were going to get into a car wreck on Sunday. Well, they did. But the expectation for the patient is, that pain score that we used to use, and many of us still do, the 1 to 10. Well, one of the things I used to say to our patients all the time, and I say to our patients all the time now, is your pain will not be 0 while you're injured. Time will take it to 0. If we give you enough pain medicine to get you to 0, that's called general anesthesia or dead. Your pain will be 0 when you're better, but if you want it to be 0 in the hospital, it's not possible. What we want to get your pain level to be is tolerable. So the word I chose is tolerable. Tolerable so you can participate with physical therapy, you can participate in your care, participate in pulmonary, toilet, and that sort of thing. So setting patient expectations is so important. And then setting expectation with nurses. When I had my cervical disc fused, just 3 years ago, my nurse came to my room and, here's your Percocet. And I was like, no, I'm good. I don't need Percocet. Just give me some Tylenol. Well, the doctor didn't write for it.
Oh my God.
I don't know. We have to get another order for Tylenol. And I said, well, please ask for that. Please call the resident. I want Tylenol. I don't want Percocet. Oh, but there's Tylenol and Percocet. Yeah, I know, but I don't want the opioid part of the Percocet. I know it comes with Tylenol. And that's me. I've worked in this hospital now for 19 years.
That's crazy.
And they still kept, and they know I'm on this thing, they know I'm like the champion of opioid free and all that stuff. And I'm still getting pushed all these pills, So we've got to change this culture. So it's a funny story because I'm telling it, but for all of our other patients who don't feel comfortable, push it back on the physician or the nurse and say, I don't really need that. They are getting their opioids. And I really think this is the part where, as commissioners, recently where you really can step in and this is a public health crisis. I can only do so much in a hospital. There are things we can do on the clinic, ambulatory side. We're exploring the ideas of a de-escalation clinic. So a patient who goes home with a fair number of opioids, do we send them to a group of physicians who are specialists or have an interest in stepping down their opioid requirements? But I think it can start earlier than that. I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office for Eastern Kentucky. His office is in Lexington. Robert Duncan. I was in this office and they're reaching out to high school students, and we want to partner with the U.S. Attorney Office and how do we reach out to middle school kids, my kids, middle school kids, high school kids. Maybe DARE didn't work so well and drug is bad and just say no didn't work so well, but let them understand and empowering these kids to say that when you go home and you open up the medicine cabinet, ask your parents, ask your grandparents, ask your uncle and aunts, and say, do you have pills in there that you don't need anymore? Can we get rid of it? FDA recently actually has released a list that said, you're not supposed to dump your pills in the toilet, but just very recently they now say, if it's an opioid, just dump it. Now, if we're not comfortable dumping it, if we don't want all of our fish to get high, then there's a drug return program. Bring it back to your local hospital. Bring it back to Walgreens. They should have drug take-back programs. And the other thing I think these kids should learn early on is that they should know that if a doctor prescribes you pain medicine because you're having your wisdom tooth pulled, you might want to challenge that. You may not need it. You might want to say, maybe I can get by with just Tylenol and ibuprofen, even though the doctor gave me a prescription. Now, I know the U.S. Attorney Office is not comfortable saying it. That's what we're going to go say it. But I think there's a lot of things that we can do. And again, stuff like this is going to take time. It won't bear fruit next year, but we got to start somewhere. We got to start and helping the next generation of Kentuckians not get addicted. I mean, I think we estimate now 40% of our patients that come in through the hospital are on opioids. That's a ton of patients coming through with opioids. So I will get off my soapbox. I appreciate the time and love to hear your thoughts and your questions.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. Very informational, that's for sure. Does any commissioners have any questions for Dr. Chang?
I don't have any questions. Your question, Commissioner, to him as far as our local hospitals, if we're on board with that process. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's a meeting that needs to happen.
Absolutely. I appreciate you talking about the education piece also, because it does seem to me that hospitals cannot be the only organization that does the education. We all have to in our community so that it actually has that buy-in and support. And I understand that that's very important. So thanks for bringing that up. I do want to ask you this, something that strikes me about Paducah in our Western Kentucky region. We have, knock on lots of wood, I've had conversations with several of the experts across the state about this, and we still are really in a preventative mode in Paducah, in Western Kentucky. We haven't quite seen it hit like Eastern Kentucky and Northern Kentucky. And I'm very thankful for that. But I also realize that we have an obligation to participate in the prevention so that we are proactive about keeping it at bay. First of all, what are your thoughts about that overall? Do you think that's true? Have you seen those numbers as well? And then can you give us some thoughts on, you mentioned prevention as the thing that you're focused on. I'd love to hear what you think that a city commission can do to help with the prevention.
Yeah. So I think any prevention is good. I think one patient is one too many. I'll tell you another quick story. When I was having my neck problem, I was going to a chiropractor, and then once we got to know each other, he started telling me a story about his kid. Went to was a star lacrosse player, went to Center College, and then he got his wisdom tooth pulled. And now, at the time when I was undergoing therapy myself with the chiropractor's son, Alex, is living under a bridge in Ohio because he was, started with wisdom tooth. And I don't know, 7 or 8 relapses later, he's now a spokesperson for this. He's clean. And back in college at UK getting his PhD. So, he's like a model citizen, but he's one of 100 that escapes it. My point, though, is that even though you're right, Western Kentucky doesn't quite have the same magnitude of problem as Northern Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky, but this could happen to anybody. And what's scary about this is that this could happen to our kids, your kid, my kid. This could happen to working people, you and me. This could happen to anyone. And I think if we can prevent one, we will have saved one life and have added some productive years to our society. With the city commissioner, you asked the second question you asked is where this comes in, and I've been sort of thinking about the role of public health initiatives, raise awareness, and the message of pain control through other modalities. And again, everybody's in, but it helps a lot if the patient says no. I don't want an opioid. Let me have ibuprofen, Tylenol. I know they all have side effects. Ibuprofen, Tylenol, and then there are alternative medicine. Sorry, they don't like that word. Integrated medicine. So massage therapy, touch therapy, aromatherapy, acupuncture. Are we offering those things enough? Okay, well, more traditional, we can talk about regional blocks. We use in regional blocks after surgery as opposed to higher dose of Percocet. Anesthesiologists who know this stuff, they will have an extremity. Well, one of my good friends, Phil, mountain climbing, and regional block, the entire thing. Didn't take a pill. I didn't take a pill because I was able to get by with Tylenol, but regional block. So people in the know. I knew not to take any. He knew not to take any. What about people who don't know, right? So the idea is, can we educate the average layperson to the same degree of knowledge, at least on the opioid-free stuff, as I do? Can we get them to my level? And it's not that hard.
Dr. Chang, can I ask you a question to regards to your, I don't know where to look, either at you at the screen or at the camera. As a mother, I've heard that variants of that story several times, where a teenager in particular has one surgery, wisdom teeth, torn tendon, Achilles heel, and are prescribed prescribed opiates to disastrous effects. Is there any guidelines in your prevention or in your research to just not prescribe opiates to teenagers who have major surgeries? There's something, it seems like, is there any sort of age guideline when they're healthy and they're just facing a surgery and they can work through other pain management techniques?
There's no age guideline. What we do know is that anything past 5 days is clearly ineffective for acute pain. And most recently, there's just been a paper published in Journal of American Medical Association.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's a VA study that basically said opioid is not effective in chronic pain. So everybody's challenging all these
Assumptions.
previously held beliefs and perception that you have to have opioid for pain control.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say is the law now says 3 days. Okay, now it doesn't limit the number of pills, but it's 3 days. 3 days after minor surgery. And KBML is now limited it to I want to say 7 days to big surgery. So no, there's not. But I do agree with you that if we could push and push. Now the other piece. Okay, so you asked me, what are we doing? So I just told you the research. And that's sort of the limit of the research. I'm sure more stuff is going to come out. What I didn't tell you we do is, and it's part of stewardship, is surveillance. So for instance, we continuously monitor the physician groups or the individual physicians who are high prescribers. And then we take a look at their practice. So we'll start at 100 MME per day, and we make that cut. And go, okay, who's prescribing routinely over 100 ME? And then we go talk to them. And once we change behavior and educate the physicians, we make another cut. We go to 90. Okay, who didn't make the 90? And then we just keep working at it. And without revealing too much, I will tell you that the physicians who are prescribing more than 100 is not who you and I would expect. Surprised us. Surprised me.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you again for taking your time this evening and joining us via Skype. It worked. I'm very proud.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve,
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Steve.
No problem.
Okay.
Disturbing.
Very disturbing. So just so everyone's aware, we actually have asked a few more local people to come join us over the next couple of our meetings to tell us about what's happening locally. So we will get some information on that. I know Four Rivers Behavioral Health is coming to present, and I think we actually have a survivor who's coming to share her story with us too. So, and actually I just wrote on my notes maybe to ask the hospitals to send someone to give us updates on what their programs are. So just some education, I think, for all of us to be aware of as we move ahead. All right, next up, we have a presentation on plans to improve the state intersection from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. You guys using fancy technology?
No, not as fancy as that. No, but Mayor, Commission, Interim City Manager, we have Mike McGregor, who's our Kentucky Department of Transportation District 1 Office District Engineer here. Occasionally, they'll come with us with some plans to do some things on some intersections that are inside the city of Paducah, and I think it would probably be more appropriate for them to share with you what their plans are with some troublesome areas we have for intersections in Paducah. And with that, I'm going to ask Mike to come up here and explain this program to you, and then he's got a gentleman here that he wishes to introduce to you as well.
Great, thank you. Hi, Mike. Good to see you.
Yes, how are y'all?
Doing well.
As Rick mentioned, we have a program that is called the Highway Safety Improvement Program. Out of that becomes projects that are spread across, the nation, but in particular, the Transportation Cabinet in Kentucky is eligible for a lot of these funds, and it's a federally funded program, so it's not state dollars, and no city dollars will have to be used for this, but
We like that part.
and that was we thought would be important to share with the commission. So
Can you say it one
money's
more time?
already
Just say it
there.
one more time.
there will be no city dollars
Thank you.
involved in this, and then actually no city personnel. Actually, our state personnel will do the inspection, and we'll have this done by contract. We have, as Rick mentioned, Keith Dameron is with American Engineers, and their firm was tasked by the Transportation Cabinet to develop the design for these intersections. Now, the larger project is more than the 3 intersections in Paducah, but we felt that it was important to us to have conversations with Rick about the impacts to the intersections in the city, and he suggested, and we agreed, that it would be important to come to the commission and explain what the Highway Safety Improvement Program is, but also give you just a brief overview of the 3 intersections, because we know your time's valuable, but we wanted to let you know where they were at and just briefly what we're going to do. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Keith Dameron so he can run through the presentation, and we'll be happy to answer questions after that.
Thank you. As Mike said, that through the 3 intersections that's been identified through the Transportation Cabinet is through the Highway Safety Improvement Program, a special pot of federal funds. This program is based on central office. KYTC actually analyzes crash data, and through the crash data and what they consider as the potential to reduce crashes, they have certain things that they look at, and these 3 intersections was 3 that rose to the top in District 1 to be looked at with a good opportunity to be able to eliminate crashes that are currently occurring at these intersections. With that, we'll jump in. I'm going to talk fast. I'm going to go through the slides, and then I'll be glad to expand on any questions that you all have. But in order to kind of get through everything, we'll just kind of hit the details as far as what we're doing. Okay, the 3 intersections is US 45X or 3rd Street at Jefferson Street. It's US 45 or 28th Street at Broadway. And it's US 60 or Hinkleville Street Road at Freedman. We'll start with the Jefferson Street. First thing, and I'm not going to hit all these data, but this is just kind of some of the crash data that was analyzed to help kind of identify what problems are occurring out there. Just to draw attention on these is the 66% angle, 25% side swipe crashes that's going on. That's 2 huge numbers that predominantly is controlling the crashes that's taking place at this intersection. With that, what we began to look at was what was going on. And the first thing was the sight distance as you look coming off Jefferson, looking up 3rd Street. That, as everyone can see, that the sight distance that we want to relocate the stop bar, that the bottom of my screen has more on it than your all screen has on it, and I apologize for that. Anyway, the stop bar is not showing in your screen, but basically if you stop at the current stop bar, you look out as you should to see, I think most that's familiar with the intersection knows you're looking into the building. So to begin to try to open up the sight distance to help decrease the angle crashes is what we decided we need to do, is to move the stop bar forward. Well, you also know that the stop bar current location, if you move it forward, it's going to put you out into your driving lanes. So the solution for that is what we call a traffic curb extension or a neck down bulb out. You may have seen these in many cities to where the curbs at the intersection actually closes in on the driving lanes. That serves two purposes. In this case, it serves the purpose, as you can see the blue lines, the stop bar at the top of the screen. It serves to be able to push the sidewalk out. The width is there for the driving lanes to not mess up the driving lanes, but to basically give protection for that crosswalk. And in order to move that out so that the stop bar can be moved forward. Now, that bulb out also serves another purpose in helping to create a traffic calming. Part of the issues with this was the side swipes, that surprisingly, a predominant number of the crashes, folks did not realize that was a one-way street. So they were turning
Saw
from the
somebody do it
right
the other
lane.
day. Like 2 days ago, somebody go down the wrong way. I was like,
I can't tell you how many crash reports that was their comment. I didn't realize that I couldn't turn from this lane, and they turned smack in front of someone. So anyway, we look at basically creating the curb bulb out. It will take maybe a parking spot or two, but it's just a short distance down to that first entrance as you see the map disappearing on the screen. And to deal with, we will also change the wrong way signs that are currently up will be changed to do not enter signs. We have, as part of the sidewalk, to not get into the utilities, to not get into the issues that would involve. As we extend the sidewalk out, we're going to basically create a flume in the new part of the sidewalk where the water will be able to drain into the current existing curb box. Now, what we will do, as you see on that, is it'll be an ADA compliant punched plane grate that'll be over top of it, meaning that we're looking for something that's got small enough heels that a lady with high heels can be able to walk across it and not be in danger of breaking the high heel. The next intersection, we'll go to 28th Street and Broadway. On this one, that the first and predominant thing, or just looking at the crashes, you see that there's 34% rear end, 34% angle crashes that's going on, and then we had 21% associated with weather conditions. To look at trying to decrease some of the angle on rear end, and what was going on was to try to change the lane pattern. Currently, and I apologize, I'm going to back up just because the photo shows it best. The current situation where all of a sudden you go from just a short distance to try to have 2 lanes of through movement with the turn lanes. What that is creating is what we call kind of a drag race event. The folks that are trying to go through in the double through lanes to get to the other side where it immediately chokes down to one lane, they're kind of racing to who can get up there first, which creates the side swipes as well as the left turns and creating some angles. You also rear ends because the through movement, not expecting for that left turn to stop in front of them, then they stop and boom, they hit. At that point, what we're going to be doing through the area is to mill out 1.25 inches of the asphalt and put back new asphalt and restripe the lanes in there to have a designated left turn lane and then have a through and right lane that's designated. Now, Mr. Murphy had reminded us that we are keeping that away from the curb, and you can see some of the hatching that's there at the curb corner and to hold them over to also keep that radius for the right turns, to try to keep them off the curb and from breaking and going up on the sidewalk. You see how we'll just kind of channel the lanes over, and then we'll be immediately bringing them back with the cross hatching that's in that black stripes that's showing.
So are you doing that Are you separating the lanes out on Broadway?
Yeah, that'll be on both sides of Broadway.
So all the sidewalks on both sides of Broadway will get taken out some?
No, this will just be in the asphalt. We're just
Oh,
gonna
just
mill,
in the
it'll be
asphalt.
mill and resurface and restriping is
Okay.
what we're looking to do. And what we're doing is taking the 2 lanes that are showing 2 through lanes with a through left combined, a through right combined, is we're now giving a left turn and a through and right combined. And like I said, with the thought is that left turn is what's helping to create the rear ends by mixing the through movements, and then they're trying to race to get to the other side of
I
Median.
may or may not use that lane to go straight though. That's kind of sad. But I understand where you're coming from. No, I drive that street. I'm saying like, that's gonna be hard adjustment because so many people,
Well, it'll be-
including myself, use that lane to get.
It'll be striped, we'll have the onlys, we'll have the pavement markers, that's
be
what
good,
the
though.
black marks there, and we'll have all of that that's listed on there to help, hopefully, be able to get your attention and stuff on what we're doing. The other thing that we'll be looking at is to upgrade the traffic signals in this intersection. Excuse me, the 5-head signal that you see in the photo for the protected permissive left turns will actually change to a 4-head traffic signal, and I think most are used now to the flashing yellow arrows. So that'll be changed. And the other thing we'll be putting on it is the reflective back plates to help draw more attention, that helps to focus better on the signal balls. With that, we'll also be changing we'll be putting some more side mounted, surface mounted signs for the lane designations on Broadway, and then on US 45 on 28th Street. If you look at the overhead signs, especially the one in the right photo, you can see those signs have long since served their life. So we'll be replacing those signs as well. Jumping to Hinkleville Road and Freeman Lane, that the crashes that on this one, you can see again, predominantly rear end collisions going on, 67% with 21% angle collisions. You can notice that while it shows the cluster on the map, that they're all over the intersection, that a good majority of them is coming as you go. I think that's eastbound as you come back into town. What we were looking at doing first of all was the current shoulder is marked to put as a no turn, no right turn. And if you go out there and watch traffic, every other car that makes that right turn is trying to use the shoulder. Well, what you have is a person that's trying to obey it, that's going up to make the turn appropriately, as another person's coming in beside them, and again, boom, you got cars that's coming in together.
Let me
So
just say, that's a big.
what we're gonna be
She
doing.
lives right there, she knows.
I live right there. Okay. Yes.
But we're
it's
gonna
on
give
me.
you a right turn lane.
Thank you, I'm so excited.
But what we will be doing is the current part of asphalt that's out there that's currently hashed out to not use, we'll be milling or removing all of that, coming back and putting concrete surface in to match the roadway and to create that turn.
But
in
that's on
there.
60, right?
That is
Yeah.
on 60,
Okay.
Yeah.
turning on to Freeman.
Anything on
Yes.
Friedman, are you getting to that?
Not really. We are doing some things to help, we're doing some things to help Freedman, but we're not able to widen. And the nature of this program is to do kind of a maintenance type fix with the highway safety funds. So you try to minimize working within existing right-of-way, working within existing constraints that you have. What we are able to do is put this turn lane in without having to extend the culvert by basically just taking the shoulder and using it accordingly. Now, what we will be doing is new striping through the intersection. And we'll be using what is called contrast markings, and that's where you'll have the pavement markings, the arrows and things, the edge lines that's put on black to help kind of create that little outline, kind of a frame of the marking to help hopefully draw a little bit more attention. Currently, the markings are all wore down out there. On 60, I don't know that you can say there probably is markings on there. They're almost totally gone. But anyway, we'll be replacing those. What we will also be doing is on the other side, coming out of Hancock's, currently it's just one huge wide entrance. So what we're doing, staying within right of way, is we're going to create some channelization through these methods of creating a right turn in and the right turn out. The others will have to come on down and use this traffic signal if you're wanting to make your left turn to come out of there.
Okay.
So that's one of the improvements to try to create some, like I said, some type of definition and guidance through there.
That will help during the quilt show.
Yeah.
I really will.
We will also be putting reflective backplates on all the traffic signals, and those we'll be putting on the Freeman as well. Now, we looked hard at trying to get rid of, we think the horizontal traffic signals potentially was maybe playing a little bit of a part because they're different than, most folks aren't used to horizontal
yeah.
lights. Due to the utilities and the cost associated to move the utilities, we're having to stay with the horizontal traffic signals. But what we are going to do on the 60 east and west direction both is we're going to put dual red head on it. That way you'll have two red lights and then also the reflective back plates. So it's going to draw a whole lot more attention than what they currently have out there today.
I think that'll help.
Yes, because I feel like it was not.
And then we'll also upgrade some advanced signing on this one. With that, I went very quick to try to just give you the key points with it and not to flood you with too much information. But I'll be glad to take any questions, as I'm sure our KYTC would be as well.
Questions? Commissioner Rhodes,
No,
do you have
go
a question? Go ahead. No, I was
just-
going to ask for a question.
Was there ever any thought about putting a traffic light at 3rd and Jefferson as there is at 4th? There is one at 4th and Jefferson.
Yeah, it was discussed, but the nature of the traffic volumes, it does not meet the manual and uniform traffic control devices warrants for installation of a traffic signal.
So if I understand, so the curb bulb, will that actually then narrow 3rd Street so to calm the, is that what you mean about
Yeah,
traffic
because
calming?
currently it's very wide.
Very wide.
Because as
Very
you come
fast.
into the intersection where it's actually kind of got room for parking, even though it's, especially in front of the historic building where it's painted out for no parking, you still have all that width. So this will actually narrow it down. You'll still have, what we're looking at doing is 11-foot lanes in that area. We're gonna, something a little bit different, we'll have a 2-foot shoulder before you get to the curb. So technically you got 13 foot to the curb line, but we're gonna stripe it out just to make folks feel a little bit tighter. That'll make them be a little bit more alert as they're coming through with it. We're gonna put the pavement markings down as well as far as the left turns and things to try to draw attention to where they need to be if they're gonna make that left turn versus going straight through.
Thank you, okay, good.
That's great. Commissioner Wilson?
So I know it's federal funds, so thank you, but that's all already been approved. The funds are there, and you'll be ready to move forward with this?
Yes, if, assuming you folks are okay, since it does affect your streets, we did want to get your concurrence with what we're looking to do. But KYTC is ready.
Yeah, I think that's what we were talking about. Keith may be able to confirm this, but I think it's I'm sorry. I think actually it's set up for a May letting of this year, if that's
Yeah,
accurate. So we should have a contractor set by the end of May, so I would anticipate that sometime this summer work will begin.
Okay.
and the nature of this work will be fairly quick. So, once they get in, they will get in fairly quick and be able to get out.
I was just going to say, I used to live on Friedman Lane, and it wasn't marked with cross hatching, and that's why we used it as a right turn lane. So I think it'd be very helpful for it to go back to a right, which is basically how we were treating it for decades. Cammy concurs. But I think that there will
Use it every day.
there will be there will be a learning curve for taking away the one on Broadway, because I think people will continue to use that to cut in front, even if it's marked as right hand only. I'm just gonna. Okay. I think we might see a small increase in crashes before everybody gets the message.
Well, first, I want to take this opportunity to thank Mike McGregor and also Keith to bring this to our attention. For that, I'll raise your attention a little bit. Keith and I actually graduated UK engineering school in 1986 together. So
I do have one more question before Mike leaves.
But one thing I did want to bring up is that the intersections that you're looking at are state-owned as far as the signals and stuff, but we do have a commonality, and that's 21st and Broadway is the very same as 28th and Broadway. So we as a community will probably need to make 21st and Broadway on the approaches.
Oh, because it has one of those.
The same, because we're communicating two different design concepts to our community within 6 or 8 blocks of one another.
Yeah,
So
people don't
we'll-
use 21st as often as 8th to do that, but you're right, they're
But I
marked the
believe if
same.
you were to bring up the crash data, it would mimic 28th and Broadway to a T.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
He has one,
Commissioner
then I have one.
Rhodes?
On those,
Mr. Rhodes.
on those bulb outs there at Third and Jefferson, you said there's gonna be some metal, is it, so it's not concrete, and it's not grass?
Yeah, the sidewalk itself will be concrete. We'll just be widening the sidewalk out
Okay.
for that difference. We had discussed and looked at the possibility if we want to keep grass or not on that, but due to the maintenance of it, we didn't think that anybody wanted that little bit of mowing strip, so we kept the concrete.
We get out there with scissors.
Only the area where the current curb box ends, only in that area. As the curb gets slid out, we're gonna just leave it open to the existing level that it is, so the water will be able to come around and still go to that same box. So it'll be like a flume, but rather than having folks kind of walking over, then having that little 4-foot ditch, we'll have a grate over top of it, that you can still walk over that area.
With high heels.
Can I just say that I think I like the idea of the grass? I'm looking at Rick, I'm looking at Mark. Because there's grass on the other side of Jefferson Street in the right of way in front of the Quilt Museum. Just want to say that. You should have said that, Kevin.
Let me, okay.
Look at him, look at him.
This
Here
process
he
has
comes.
not been fully vetted.
Oh, good.
Offices,
Okay,
and
excellent.
we're
All right.
Still in the conception.
It's on the record that I'm interested
I
in
mean,
grass.
They have to give something that we can establish, estimations and budgetary things on. But if you remember Town Lift in mid-'70s, when we built the bulb outs for the planters and stuff, when we built those, we actually did exactly what he's talking about, that presented operational and maintenance problems with drainage and organic material collecting under here, and we didn't get the drainage that we need. These are some of the things I want to talk to them about, and to, I guess, maybe improve the design for that and still accomplish all the things we want and that are in the, I guess, best interest of public safety for that. So, I mean, we can work with that and do that. What you're seeing tonight is not the final concept, but we have to meet a whole bunch of different things that are physically in place, ADA, those kind of things. So, hats off to them for bringing that to us this evening.
Absolutely.
I wasn't born
Commissioner
yet in the
Wilson?
mid-'70s.
Commissioner Hall.
Can I have one more question?
He said you remember in the mid-'70s, and I was like, I wasn't born.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes, I have one more for Mike. And I know this is a different topic, but it's still improvements in the city as far as the I-24 interchange, the changes that were proposed there at 4. Do you have enough time to talk about it? At exit 4?
Yeah, a few minutes. Actually, Rick brought that up when we were sitting there and wondered if I might give an update, and I told him that I could, if depending on time. But yes, our design is complete in terms of the interchange and the access management along US 60. We're in the process of finalizing some agreements with the utilities. Very little of the utilities are being affected, and we're having to work through purchasing some easements for the widening, some of the widening that we're doing. That is always the part that is trickiest to determine how long it will take, especially in that particular area where you're dealing with some corporations that, you can't just walk in the store and say, I need to talk to the owner about buying. You have to work through all the processes of trying to purchase easements or any right of way. So we're in that phase right now, and so as soon as we can get some clarity about having those easements purchased, we'll be setting a letting date. But
So those funds are also approved and ready.
yes.
And I'm sorry, what's the design?
At one of the, just a second, at one of the strategic planning sessions that the mayor has been having with the community that I attended as well, there was talk about sidewalks, and that people that are staying at hotels in that area or going from one area to the other, it's very difficult to walk around and to get to like the restaurants or some of the other areas. So are any sidewalks included with that at all?
There are some on the north side, I guess, on the Outback and Mall side of US 60. There are some sidewalks that will be constructed. It's difficult to be able to construct them on both sides and have appropriate sidewalks and crosswalks, because of the width of the roads and in terms of the volume of the traffic. It's difficult to have a user-friendly crosswalk out there. But yes, that we've tried to consider all of that and provide some connectivity through sidewalks. Chris, I don't know if you have any
Yeah, there's
extra.
in conjunction with Rick, we've included a multi-use path, hike and bike path, sidewalk from Coleman Road all the way to in front of where the Qdoba is at now with the project. And I think the overall,
That's awesome.
Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, the overall goal with that is that eventually, I guess if the Greenway Trail is able to connect from where it ends there at County Park Road and down Coleman, it could connect to that. And that would get you through the interchange to the mall area.
That'd be
We do
great.
not have enough room within the right-of-way we're looking at and the funding we had to really add sidewalks all up and down US 60, but it does get us to that point at least. Our goal is to help with have something that then can be used for the overall connectivity of that whole trail system.
Great. That's excellent.
That's
He totally redoes that interchange.
Yes.
Is it going to be like, are y'all talking
Double
about what they
diamond.
do in Lexington?
Yes, Harrisburg Road,
Yeah.
where you drive on the wrong side of the road.
I mean, it works, but it's very disarming the first time you do it.
Yes.
The other thing I'm interested in, and this might be out of scope, but I'm thinking about that intersection where Qdoba is now to Panera, and I see a lot of people run across that intersection on foot. And then also the intersection over by Rafferty's and Coleman Road, like you're talking about. So, is there any way to sneak that in?
It's just some paint. I mean,
I can't remember right now if we have crosswalks included
Okay.
in the design there. A lot of times we don't like to have crosswalks and signal heads for crosswalks when there are no sidewalks, because you kind of get into a catch-22 of you encouraging somebody to cross there when they don't have a sidewalk to come from or
Good
don't
point.
have a
Good
sidewalk
point.
to
Yeah.
go to.
Yeah.
So sometimes we end up feeling like it's better to leave that out and have them figure out another way to get there. But we'll certainly go back and look at that and see how easy it is to incorporate that into it, how we feel, what our comfort level is with that.
That's good.
So
Thank you.
is the scoping study for US Highway 60, is it still, if you looked it back up, is it still a fairly accurate thing for that area we're talking about?
The one that was done 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, that'd be
Yes.
Okay.
The plans that we're doing now with the access management, adding a third lane eastbound,
Use those
and
interior roads?
doing the DCD project are all directly out of that scoping study.
That's good news. I have one more question. How often does this stuff happen that you showed us today? How often are you looking at those safety improvements and actually implementing on them?
We get, statewide, we get a certain number of dollars per year for different types of these safety projects, either run off the road type accident, problem areas, signal or intersection areas. And we have our HSIP people in Frankfurt kind of dole those out highway district per highway district. And so we get money every year in the district for these different types of projects. It's just.
Based on data.
But they're
yeah,
data-driven, it
it's based-
sounds like,
It's based
the
on
decision is.
data-driven.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of the money that goes towards the run off the road, roadway departure accidents are a lot of times on our rural roads. I know we have another batch of intersections that we're working on with a different consultant, but I can't remember, we just started those, and I can't remember off the top of my head if any of those are in the city of Paducah. But we usually have something like this, 4, 5, 6 per year that we get to work on.
Wow, that's great.
As they come up, as they pursue them, we bring them before you to alert you of that, those things that are going on.
To go back to one thing I was kind of whispering with Keith on the side over here about, the intersection at 3rd Street and Jefferson, where we were discussing the bulb out and the utility strip, the drainage, and our initial idea was to just bulb that curb out and build a new drainage structure there on the curb. And we discovered that was going to have a pretty serious impact to 8-inch distribution line, or maybe 4-inch distribution line for Atmos Energy, and then also a very old and large sewer line, combined sewer line from JSA. And we've talked to, and I think Paducah Water has a water line in that area too. And we've talked to JSA and Paducah Water and Atmos and tried to work with them, but that there's some concerns that with the age that the water and sewer lines are in that area, that if we can't just replace a 20-foot section of it or move a 20-foot section of it to accommodate a drainage structure, and we could be into a very expensive, utility relocation effort. So that drove us to leaving the drainage structures in the same place and trying to figure out some other way to bulb that curb in. So we're certainly willing to, look into other options with grass and concrete that might look a little better than what we proposed. But on the flip side, we don't want to have to get into those utilities and add $100,000 to the project at least in order to accommodate that.
Well, we appreciate that. I'm sure Rick will help think through that. That is a historic district, so we're very protective of that. But we're also thankful for solving a big problem that we have on the intersection.
I have one more.
So go ahead. We're almost finished. We're going to be here till midnight.
I just want to thank you for expediting 32nd Street with that bridge.
Oh, yes.
At a time when the state, has really no money for bridges, you guys helped us come through and find some emergency funding. And to some people, I know it seemed like a long time that it was closed, but it really wasn't.
Mike and I discussed, we didn't want to come do this for Rick until that was open.
Thank you very much, though.
It is much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, any other questions? Oh, thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you. All right, shall we move into the business? All right, we're going to move to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests. Anyone need to take something off the consent agenda?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Under municipal orders number 3.
Okay. Got that, City Clerk? All right. So now I'm going to ask that the City Clerk read the items recommended for approval minus item number 3 under municipal orders.
Okay. Consent agenda for March 13th, 2018. Minutes for the February 27th, 2018 City Commission meeting. Personnel actions. A municipal order authorizing the Planning Department to execute an electronic grant application and all documents necessary through the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency for a fire prevention and safety grant in the amount of $22,800 for the annual combined conference. A municipal order accepting the bid for the City of Paducah's calendar years 2018 and 2019 concrete program, and a municipal order accepting the bid of Central Paving Company of Paducah for compost grinding of tree debris and yard waste.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Harless?
Aye. I'm going to move to this municipal order discussion. To the
Yes, we need
municipal
to
order
put
discussion.
the-
Great. Do you have the motion for that?
I do.
Okay.
Just one. So.
All right.
Okay. The item that was removed is a municipal order approving change order number 1 with Central Paving Company of Paducah, Inc. for the Noble Park Tennis Court Reconstruction Project and authorizing the mayor to execute the change order.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, looking at the change order, the initial bid was, from Central Paving, was $177,000, a little bit over, for the tennis courts reconstruction. The change order is in the amount of $30,000, which pushed the contract over $200,000. My question is, looking at, I remember years ago when we were, bids went out for the property at the Carson Center. And I looked at our contract that we sent out to contractors. And then within that document, it was very clear what who was responsible for what. Site prep, if I'm going to submit a bid for the job, I go out, I do some work, some groundwork prior to submitting my bid. Once I submit my bid, that's the money that I can do the job for. Change orders, for me, becomes a little weird because typically at the end of that, that pushes the total amount of the job way past what was originally bid. My concern is that Central Paving on their website, they talk about, it's listed, tennis courts. This is something that they do quite a bit, dealing with asphalt. And then we look at the reason for the change order was due to subsurface water conditions. So I'm thinking to myself, dealing with this on a regular basis, this isn't something new. The subsurface water conditions. I don't know what type of due diligence that Central Paving did prior to submitting their bid. I understand that the engineering firm went out and did some core drilling. I don't know how long after that core drilling was done, then the job started. But this subsurface water, that isn't anything new to this type of work. So my concern is, shouldn't they know that? Shouldn't they have been in business a long time? This would be something, because if you don't get that right, then you got to go in and you got to tear out some stuff. And whenever you start tearing out some stuff, that runs into money. So that's why I wanted that to pull to get an understanding on
Certainly.
Why, because that's $30,000.
Yes, it is. I have Kenny McDaniel from Bacon Farmer Workman here to give us a better explanation on that. And
Mayor, Commissioners. To give you a little background on the tennis courts themselves, the original tennis courts built in early 70s. There was an upgrade to the tennis courts in the 90s where basically the existing asphalt was left. There was a sandwich of gravel put in, and then another layer of asphalt on top of that, okay? The reason for the upgrades, was basically twofold. There was a crack that ran down the center of the, or down one end of the tennis courts. I don't know if you're all familiar with that or not, but it got pretty wide and got pretty full of caulk. So, and that was the only visible problem with the tennis courts. BFW did go out, we core drilled on that end of the court. We found, to my surprise initially, that there was 3 inches of asphalt over about 4 to 6 inches of DGA gravel, and then a layer of asphalt underneath that, okay? In talking with some tennis court experts or tennis court people out of Louisville and also out of Mount Vernon that do surfacing, that is the typical overlay of a tennis court system, okay? At the time of the core drilling, we did it in late June, 1st of July. It was dry, there was no issues. However, I might add that subsurface water was not the only issue with this total change order, okay? When we core drilled it, we found 3 inches of asphalt over rock. Our design was to remove the top layer of asphalt and level the playing surface to where both ends of the court were at the same elevation. When we did that, we were basically holding the north elevation toward the park, and we were raising the Park Avenue end of the courts about 18 inches in some locations. That's how, I don't play tennis, but I work with a lot of people that do, and they say, well, I wondered why I couldn't ever hit the ball. Okay. But we cored the north end where the visible issues were. On the south end, where there was no visible issues, when the contractor started tearing up that asphalt, he got into basically 7 to 8 inches of asphalt over the top of gravel, which caused a lot more gravel to be hauled in to raise that area. That stuff was hauled off of the site, and we had to bring gravel in to fill that other 4 inches of what was asphalt that we assumed to be gravel, okay? Bear with me here. Okay. So that added some of the additional gravel that was needed to bring in for the change order. Once we got the base coat of asphalt down, that lower layer that we couldn't really tell what elevation or if there was puddles or anything out there, it's our belief that there was some low areas that ponded water. They basically got the rock down, graded to grade. There was water. It rained excessively for about a week there. And we feel that there was water that ponded below the DGA. Now, whenever we went out to place the first layer of asphalt, we had density checks and moisture checks on the actual gravel surface itself. But whenever you're checking gravel, you're only checking the top 2 to 4 inches, okay? The asphalt was laid. There's a vibratory roller that goes over it to compact it. At that time, the water was brought up to the surface of that DGA and created pretty much mush. And that base surface, there was 3 areas, I think, that we ended up having to cut out, take that out, and put dry material back in. So that added to the extra demolition. Now, the gravel that was brought out was not hauled off the site. It's right there at the parking lot to be used in the upgrade and shaping of that parking lot. We saved that on site so that we could try to divert as much surface water runoff away from the courts as possible, and also provide additional gravel surfacing there for the parking area. But back to your original statement about the Carson Center, Convention Center clearing and all of that. There's 2 types of bids, a lump sum bid and a unit price bid. I know $177,000, $200,000 is not a small amount, but in the realm of construction, it's kind of a tight number. Okay, it's on the lower end of that. You have a lump sum bid or you have a unit price bid. This was bid out as a unit price per ton of DGA brought in, per ton of asphalt, per square foot of demolition. Okay, the original demolition, we knew what that was. It was the existing asphalt. The DGA, I've tried to explain why there was additional DGA in the front end, and then where the extra demolition and DGA came in, the gravel came in on the back end.
Well, let me just jump in here. This change order that we're looking at in the amount of over $30,000, you said there were some other things in there other than the subsurface water conditions. But that was the one that caused the materials to turn to mush, and you got to get those out of there. Couple of things. One, you guys checked one end of the court, not the other. And the one that you did check, you checked in June, which is pretty dry. The one that you didn't check have water in it. So would it be safe to say if you'd have checked that, you'd have found that?
No, sir. Actually, where the majority of the problems came up, where the actually 80% of the area that had to come up was in that crack line where we actually tested.
But there was water in the other end.
No, I don't think.
The end that you did not check, that you didn't test.
No, it was from the nets to the north is everything if we cut out an area, it was from the nets to the north. We core drilled halfway between the nets and the north edge of the asphalt.
So you did drill where there was water?
Yes, we were in that same area. It was the majority of the big number in there, the gravel, was because of the asphalt thickness that went extreme. I mean, there's not a tennis court that I know of, well, there's not a tennis court outside of Paducah that's got 7 to 8 inches of asphalt.
So how could this have been avoided?
Well, I mean, we could have core drilled down at the other end and found out that there was excessive amounts of asphalt down there.
How much does core drilling cost?
Well,
It was costing us, because he didn't do it, $30,000.
well,
How much does it cost to core drill is my question.
$500 or less. It was included in the price of the design. There was no additional geotechnical cost there.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So this is not estimates by Central Paving.
No, the rock tickets are, I have the rock tickets in my office. I've double-checked their numbers on that. I've double-checked the numbers on the asphalt tonnage tickets. Everything that you see is installed was installed under BFW supervision, so.
So nothing happened where Central Paving raised the price?
Absolutely not. They had a bid price, which one of the reasons for going to a unit price on the smaller projects is they give you a true price on that. They don't look at it and say, okay, if I have a 20% run over, I'm going to go ahead and bid it in. Then if they bid it in and they don't need it, it's their money. I mean, it's to be fair to the contractor and be fair to the owner. And I mean, the whole process of bidding the project, it was discussed as to a lump sum or a unit price bid. And we just felt that this would be the safest for everything.
But I guess if Central Paving does that kind of work, a lot of other places, would they have not known that? To anticipate that this issue could come up?
Sounds rare.
I don't know that anybody would have anticipated a 7-inch pavement pour on any portion of it. We don't have 7-inch pavement pours on any roadways that we have.
Exactly.
What's a roadway pavement for?
I mean, no, we don't, just in comparison, our roads have basically a 4-inch.
That's what I was asking. So it's bigger than, they poured it thicker than you would a road?
I
Yes.
think, looking back, as hindsight's 20/20, I think that when they originally put it down,
This was the old surface.
Well, this was like the 90s.
the
Yes.
90 surface. I think when they originally put it down, I think it was, well, it would have been, if they'd have kept it 3 inches, it would have been basically 18 inches from one end line to the
Oh,
other.
so they poured it thick to level it
And then
out.
they kind of leveled it out after the fact.
Was the convention center, that was a lump sum, I'm assuming, bidding process?
I believe so, yes.
Any other comments, questions?
I
Does
wasn't
anyone-
involved in that, but I think so.
The only question I have is about, this is probably a tricky situation to ask you since you're in the hot seat, but I'm just thinking about prevention of this kind of thing happening. And is there a standard in your industry that more core drilling does happen in these kinds of projects? Or are we asking for something that's a little bit out of range? I'm just curious on what's normal.
do, core drilling in this situation is much like soil boring, okay, for a building situation. Basically, you're looking at a 6-inch diameter hole. I've seen projects where you're putting up a 100,000 square foot building, you put 4 holes out there, basically 4 inches, 6 inches in diameter, and you never have a problem. This project, of course, now, I might go for
Well, I'm
another
guessing there's not an industry standard for tennis courts.
There's really not, and the thing about it is, we're trying to leave it as unmarked as we can for the current use of it up until the demolition starts. So as you go out and you're cutting up the surface, you're creating issues for the tennis players up until the actual work starts. So this one, yes, if I had to do it over again, I'd take one more core down on the other end. I apologize for that, but I believe that I've had several engineers tell me that they can see in the ground just as far as I can. So, I mean,
we did the core drilling where there was an evident structural issue.
Yeah.
And that's where we were. We did not have an evident structural issue on
Well, no
the
wonder,
other end
because
of
there
the
were
court.
7 inches of asphalt.
If there's 7 inches asphalt, we wouldn't be here. Right, everywhere. So
No wonder.
Someone go back to Central Paving was doing the work, and did they alert you when they found this?
yes. They called me, they started on the north side, peeling the asphalt back. They called me about halfway through, said, hey, we're getting into thicker asphalt.
Okay, so they alerted you, so you knew right away, you were called right away to come and see what they had discovered.
And, I mean, through the water issues on the old surface, or underneath the surface, once we got the surface down, our best engineering, I mean, I've had Chris Farmer out there, our geotechnical engineer. I've had Danny Dow in charge of testing and inspections, and we had a actual testing and inspections guy on site the entire time stuff was going down. So we beat it to death around the office. The only thing we can think of is that lower layer of asphalt was holding a bunch of water. When that vibrator hit it, it just turned it to mush.
So I'm guessing the majority of that extra 30,000 goes to Central Paving for their
It's all
additional.
It all goes central.
All goes to Central
We're not
Paving.
This reminds me of the 26 years in the car business. And the difference is that I knew, and I'm trying to explain to a service customer why it all went terribly wrong, and nobody had malice. It just, it was not foreseeable. And I'm glad that you're over there and not me.
Thank you.
We're not doubting your motives.
Thank you for your explanation.
Thank you.
It's been
Not
very
much
thorough and
fun.
very good.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I've been there.
Thank you.
So I
Thank
think
you so much.
Thank you for being here. I think we have one of two options. We can either table this issue and go back. Why are you saying no?
I'm not saying
I
no.
thought you said no. Or we can go ahead and move forward and vote on it. So
It's fine.
is everyone, okay, all right.
mean, I
Will you
would.
call roll, please?
Yeah, Commissioner Abraham,
No.
Commissioner Holland,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. All right, moving on. Commissioner Wilson, I think you have a motion.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, "An Ordinance of the City of Paducah, Kentucky, authorizing and approving an agreement between the City of Paducah and Strand Associates, Inc. for the Comprehensive Stormwater Master Plan Project Phase 2 for the development of stormwater compliance documents and funding strategy in an amount not to exceed $257,040, and authorizing the mayor to execute all documents relating to same. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The city hereby authorizes and approves an agreement between the city and Strand Associates, Inc. for the development of stormwater program compliance documents and funding strategy for the comprehensive stormwater master plan project Phase 2, an amount not to exceed $257,040, and authorizes the mayor to execute the agreement.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Harless?
Aye. Before we move on, I want to make sure if there's public comment tonight that you've filled out a form. It's over here? Okay, especially if has to do with these issues. I want to make sure we're,
No, it's not.
not these? Okay, that's
Neither
fine.
one.
All right, let me just make sure. We'll bring it to the end if that's okay. An appointment, okay. All right, we're good with that. All right, Commissioner Rhodes.
Thank you, Tammy. I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance approving the final report of the Paducah Planning Commission on the proposed zone changes for properties located at 3101, 3106, 3107, 3113, 3119, 3123, 3124, 3125, 3132, 3133, 3138, 3139, 3142, 3144, 3145, 3200, 3201, 3204, 3210, 3213, 3216, 3220, 3223, 3227, 3230, Kentucky Avenue, and 3201, 3207, 3213, 3117, 3121, 3125, 3201, 3207, 3213 Clark Street, and 243, 245, 247 South 31st Street from R1, low and medium density residential zone, to B1, convenience and service zone. This ordinance is summarized as follows, and I don't have to repeat all those again. Rezone properties located at 3201 through 3230 Kentucky Avenue and 3101 through 3213 Clark Street and 243 through 247 South 31st Street from R1 low and medium density residential zone to B1 convenience and service zone, and amending the Paducah zoning ordinance to affect such rezoning. Further, this ordinance includes an amendment to the ordinance, which was adopted by the Board of Commissioners on February 27, 2018, that retail packaged liquor stores, retail tobacco stores, vape or electronic cigarette shops, and any other retail establishments that sell similar products shall be prohibited in these properties stated in the zone change.
Second.
Any discussion?
Did I miss a number?
Discussion, anyone? Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Harless?
Aye. I think we found Commissioner Rhodes a new profession when he retires from being a
you could be an auctioneer.
He's an auctioneer.
I'm like that FedEx guy.
That's good.
Years ago.
You did good. It's impressive. We'll see if
I
Commissioner Holland can
practiced.
do it.
You know it.
Commissioner Holland.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance approving the final report of the Paducah Planning Commission on the proposed zone change for property located at 3116 Kentucky Avenue from R2 low and medium density residential zone to B1 convenience and service zone. This ordinance is summarized as follows. Rezone property located at 3116 Kentucky Avenue from R2 low and medium density residential zone to B1 convenience and service zone, and amending the Paducah zoning ordinance to effect such rezoning. Further, this ordinance includes an amendment to the ordinance, which was adopted by the Board of Commissioners on February 27, 2018, that retail packaged liquor stores, retail tobacco stores, vape or electronic cigarette shops, and any other retail establishments that sell similar products shall be prohibited in the properties stated in the zone change.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Holland?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Harless?
Aye. And Commissioner Abraham.
I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance extending the boundary of the City of Paducah, Kentucky by finalizing the annexation of certain properties lying adjacent to the corporate limits of the City of Paducah and defining accurately the boundary of said properties to be included within the said corporate limits. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The City of Paducah hereby approves the final annexation of certain tracts of property contingent to the present city limits located at 1740 and 1770 New Hope Road and containing 3.9 acres more or less.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
Does that go through does that have to go through planning and zoning?
Tamara, do you mind coming up?
This particular request is to allow for the construction of townhomes. And it depends on how they lay it out, because as you know, everything that's annexed into the city comes in as R1. And right now, we are discussing what their plans are going to look like. So it may come through as a rezoning if the R1 doesn't quite work out. But if they can do it under the R1, then they could just go forward with it.
Okay, so it's just coming in as just annexation?
Just annexation.
Requested annexation?
Right now.
Okay, great.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Interim City Manager.
All right. Yes, we have a couple things. First, I'd like to bring Rick Murphy forward to discuss next steps as far as the flood wall and what we can expect in the next few weeks.
Mayor Commission, I've drafted a quite lengthy email of things to expect to come for you all, but for the viewing public, one thing that's happened, the river's down to 47 feet. It's not necessarily any threat to us right now, and as it continues to fall, Mother Nature leaves behind quite a mess. So what we're doing right now, tomorrow, we'll be removing 2 gates. We actually have 23 gate locations in as we speak. Not all of those gate locations affect business, but the one thing that we do want to do is we want to get business up and operating totally without any impediments for their daily operations. So the first 2 gates that are going to come out will be coming out at 5th and Park Avenue. That's a big diagonal gate that everybody recalls leaving as you're leaving the convention center, and another one is over on the south side of town. That affects one of our inland waterways companies for their access to the river. The other gates, let's talk about Broadway and Kentucky, those that are of most interest to us. The river is actually still up over the 2nd road, so we typically block that so nobody goes down there unbeknownst to them that there's a river there and there's no road there. So we will leave several of those gates in place because we're actually initiating tomorrow a very comprehensive cleanup of the riverfront. We're first going to pick up all of the debris, that being litter that's physically in the water. We're actually making a conscious effort to remove that litter and take it to a landfill of solid waste. But then also we're going to collect all the natural debris, take it to our compost yard, grind it up, and put it in people's yards with some of the recycling opportunities we have there. So we'd like for our community to be patient. We have a lot of people that like to go down to the river. One thing that is a very tourist attraction is let the river rise, and you have a lot of people who want to come see the rise. Well, that kind of impedes our ability to do a good job of cleanup. And then we don't want people to, trip, fall, damage their car on a log or whatever they may not know that's out there. So we're going to make that effort to clean that up, and then we will open the appropriate gates at the appropriate time as it's cleaned up. So I hope that helps you all. I will state that our dock did float. It did float where it was supposed to. It stayed in place, and all the things. And as the water recedes and goes down, it will get back on its perches again. And when it's on its perches and we can reconnect all of the utility umbilicals to it, we will. But everything has gone well, and we're very proud of that. But the river, the river side of the flood wall, even though we'll make a heck of an effort to clean it up, we'll need some Mother Nature with some rain to, dilute it a little bit. But there are areas that it's got quite a odor to it, as far as it's just a natural river odor to it, and that's in the Schultz Park area. But again, we're doing our darndest to keep her clean.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks. And just to let you know, we do. Of course, we have to continue doing everything else. We have a dome installation that's planned on for next week. So as we're going through, we've got a lot of staff going in a lot of different directions with that. I did want to give a report on the MLK property as requested last week. Couple of things. We checked with, we do have an encroachment agreement with the NAACP in the city that was created in 1995. So, and it's got some verbiage as far as use of the facility and that sort of thing. Nothing particular to cutting grass or anything of that nature, but it does have some use issues in there. The light that was questioned is a backlight that comes from the cemetery. And so there is a backlight, and it's on the pole that lights the cemetery. The flags are purchased by the NAACP, and the mowing is done by the Parks Department. And that's basically where we are, and has been as far back as we can find. It has been in the 17 years that I've been here, and I'm sure it's been probably in closer to 1995 when it was all installed. Because we do cut other properties, not many, but we do cut some other properties that are not city property. And that's one of the things that I know previous administrations had wanted us to make sure that we kept things neat, particularly the entrances into neighborhoods. And so that's one of the things that we have continued to do year in and year out.
And you had mentioned, I think, the estimated cost yearly to maintaining that.
Right. The light, which is actually on city property, so that's over at the cemetery, that's if you separate that out from it, we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of about $600 a year.
For the light.
No, for the mowing.
Oh, mowing.
Mowing.
Okay, 600.
And grounds maintenance. The light over at the cemetery would be there anyway.
Okay.
And that's about $500.
Okay.
Excuse me, that $600 a year, what is that including? That's not, because the number I got for the maintenance of that property since 2000 was far north of $600.
They had included the lighting in on that, I believe.
This included the labor, the equipment, the total package.
Was that, and the lighting was the largest individual part.
The hourly rate, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
All of that. So from 2000 to 2018, the average cost per year was right at $1,457.
Okay.
Average cost per mole was $56.05. So you total that over 19 years, that comes to $27,690.
And if you take out the light, which was part of that, the lighting was part of that, which was about $500.
Okay, well,
a year.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're counting.
I missed about $300.
How long does it take them to mow that property?
Half hour, 45 minutes, just depending on the day.
And how often does it get mowed?
So $1,500 is a good estimate. Can we all
Yeah.
agree
If-
that might be a good estimate from your numbers, Commissioner?
About
Is 1,500, can we use that?
Yeah, and these numbers I didn't just pull out of my head.
Oh, I understand.
they-
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they came from our department.
Yeah. So I guess the question really, though, is about the entrance to that neighborhood. That's the thing that kind of makes me wonder, if we don't own the property,
But we have an
but
encroachment.
we have an encroachment agreement, and that's an entrance, a pretty prime entrance to a neighborhood in our downtown area, that we're paying $1,500 a year to make sure that that is a pleasant sight.
Yeah, well, and you also have a conversation that is like, okay, whoever owns the property, keep it up. I mean, I'm coming out of my pocket to make sure that your property is maintained to where it needs to be.
So if we're going to do that, we have to ask what other properties in Paducah that we keep up, and then we're going to have a really lengthy conversation. So if we want to keep that going, absolutely we should, but we have to find out the other 10 or more places that we do this. So we can't just pick out one
Right.
group
I mean,
that we do this with. If we want to look at it, let's look at it.
Well, what I'm saying is that I'm sure there are some people that would take issue with their tax dollars going to maintain private property. Some folks don't have a problem with it, but some folks would. So that conversation should happen at some point to see exactly how many properties we're maintaining from for private property owners. I think that would be I think that would be
Reasonable. I
reasonable
agree.
conversation.
And I think there are a lot of people who are concerned with the outward appearance of our community. And if I'm just speaking to my own personal experience with constituents, I get a lot more interactions about people concerned about areas that we should be taking care of that aren't ours, that we should just go on ahead and get in there and clean them up so they look nice for visitors, then I get concerns like this about taxpayer expenses. We had an extensive meeting with the Paducah Garden Club where we've talked about this, where we've talked about our outward appearance to visitors, to tourism, to community members, all along our main thoroughfares, this being one of them. So, I mean, I think that that's the other side of that conversation, is there are people already concerned that we're not doing enough in areas, both public and private, and the appearance of our landscaping in town. I hear more from that than I do from concerns about what we are doing so far. As
Sure.
far as the conversation.
Yeah, and I get the same comment, and also, you know, if we've mowed this thing since 1995, you know, sort of the expectation is it's just something we do to make our city look better.
Because we've always done it that way.
Yeah, you know, and there's something about historic.
Well, we march there every
Yeah.
January.
We do. In the spirit of the mountaintop,
You got it.
right?
I mean, it's a pretty.
I guess to me, it just comes down, do we want to continue to keep up where the MLK monument is? That's very much of an entrance to the city.
Sure is.
Well, I think if anything, this is just worth us getting knowledgeable about the properties that we maintain that we don't own. I think it's just a worthwhile exercise eventually. I don't think we have to be in a hurry, but I think this is something we should at least know as a commission comprehensively. But I don't like to pinpoint one group and one property. I think that's unfair in this conversation, in my opinion.
Because my guess is you'll find of the 30 some odd buildings we own, I think it's about 30, that there are a lot of things that we do. You know, historical precedents. We've done it. It makes our city look better.
Anything else?
That's it. Thank you. My report's done.
All right, thank you very much. Any statements from the commissioners? Anyone?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Scott Johnston and his daughter Catherine for hanging out, checking out how the city works. Very passionate young lady about the city she lives in. Had a great conversation prior to our meeting, and just want to encourage you to stay focused and check your motives.
You performed in The Modern Mrs. Millie. I thought I saw you at the Chamber perform for something. You look so familiar to me.
You've been in other places, though.
Yeah.
That's it. She's been in other places.
Yeah, I
at the
thought you
Market House.
performed for, the Rotary Club. No, maybe, all right, maybe not you. The other
But at
who's
the
wearing-
Market House Theater.
Yes, I've definitely seen you perform. Maybe it wasn't there.
Well, welcome.
And
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Wilson, I might add that Scott and I were in leadership together.
Oh, leadership.
Leadership 20.
We're on class 31.
No, I did not bring Sarah.
I do have, do you have something else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to praise our city staff, in particular the finance department, as they transition into the new Munis system. They have spent a lot of long hours here at City Hall helping all the different, particularly their transition and the other departments' transition. I'm sure Michelle can speak to their dedication. I think that this system and updating the technology for the city is going to be so beneficial, and I know that it's a tough project that a lot of our city staff are spending a lot of time and energy on, and I just wanted to make sure that they heard from up here how much we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Ditto.
You want to mention our city, Paducah Life?
Sure, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You do it. You brought it
Well, I
up.
would just, it's obvious we have
Let
a
Mark
very.
do it.
Well, I asked Mark, I was in Mark's office this afternoon, and he had about a foot-tall stack of Paducah Life magazines, and I thought he would have certainly brought one to the commission meeting so we could learn that we have a 50-year referee veteran
50 years.
in
Wow.
softball. No, excuse me. Women's
aren't they?
Fast pitch
pitch
softball.
softball,
There
okay.
you go. That's not all 50 years we're in that, but particularly the last
But-
26 or 27 have been. So
Nice to see somebody who's a good hobby.
Yeah,
it's a great avocation.
He can do some really great eye training with you if you ever get
Those great. Okay, I have a few things before we move on to public comment tonight that I wanted to bring up. My intention tonight is to put a motion in front of you directing our Director of Planning to look at the idea of putting together a tree conservation plan for our zoning ordinance. And what this would do would allow for the request for the permitting process for anyone coming forward to get a permit to put together a tree conservation plan so we understand better what's really happening in that landscaping. Specifically for trees. So we've talked quite a bit recently, actually, during our strategic planning sessions about the tree canopy and the ice storm having taken so many of those. We also heard some concerns about the recent zoning change that we did about trees also. So I was talking with Tamara earlier, and there are some really good tools out there that are very reasonable, but I just would like to put on the table that we could get the planning department to investigate what this could look like. No decisions made here, just directing Tamara to do so and to bring something back to us that we could then discuss.
Because is the idea, Tamara, that like the current requirements are you just have to have trees, so you can tear them all out and then plant new trees and meet the requirement? Is the idea that this would now be hold up, don't tear them out, see what you can save?
It could be that. It could be a number of approaches. I know there are some trees that are recognized here locally as being more important from a cultural historical standpoint. Also, dogwoods, we have the Dogwood Trail about ready to hit. If they would just bloom. So I'm going to put forward to you a couple of different options for you to look at because there's different approaches. And you, of course, can choose what's appropriate for the city of Paducah.
This is an effort to get the ball rolling and provide some formal direction towards developing that plan. So I would like to put that on the table, if you don't mind. I make a motion to direct Tamara Tracy to look into creating a tree conservation plan.
I'll second that.
In the spirit of Arbor Day and Earth Day and the
They're all
Dogwood Trail,
coming. Yeah.
I would second as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Commissioner Rhodes seconded
Yes,
first.
yeah.
He did. He beat me to it.
Tree conservation.
Conservation plan, I'll write it down for you. And if you don't mind calling a roll, that'd be great.
If your trees.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Holland,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Harless.
Aye. And also, I just want to give one brief update on the strategic planning process. We were working on a first draft after all of the feedback sessions. I have a few more to go next week, and then I'll make sure that all of you get that. It is more detailed, I'd say, than what you saw from the Novak Consulting Group because of the feedback that we've received. Not a lot has shifted. There's a little bit of focus there. We had 11 key performance areas. We've kind of mashed them up into 7. So I'll be looking forward to giving that to you, hopefully by the next meeting. So, okay, with that, let's move on. Anyone else? I'm going to move on to public comment. That's okay. Okay. All right, we have Miss Patty Bell from Ohio Street.
I'd like to thank the mayor and the commissioners for allowing me to voice my opinion tonight.
Absolutely.
I've been reading a lot about let's do something to Paducah. Let's do something to the south side. Let's do something to the west end or the middle city. How about doing something for us handicap? I've been to rallies right across the street at Dolly McNutt. They came to me. They were down at the fountain. And because several of us can't get downstairs, they brought the rally to us. I can't go visit that beautiful fountain down there because I can't get down the stairs, either with my walker or my handicapped scooter. And I know a lot of handicapped people in this town that vote. On my way, I take my handicapped scooter to go fishing at Noble Park. And from where I live, which is Elmwood Court, I ride down the middle of the street, 25th Street, which goes into Western Baptist. I turn and I go down the sidewalk to 28th, and then I turn up and go up 28th all the way to Noble Park. The sidewalks are so bad, I have to ride on 28th Street. There's cracks, they're heaved, and I'm not just talking down 28th Street. That's a pretty bad one because it's a very busy street to ride up and down on. It's very dangerous. I like to ride all the way down here to the river, but the sidewalks on Broadway are just almost as bad as 28th Street. So I ride down Broadway. Now, I'm one of the ones that has the little orange flag and the orange triangle on the back of my chair. But there's so many handicapped that don't think about that or can't afford it. I made my triangle out of a piece of cardboard and orange paint. Cost me $15 for that little flag. And I know people that can't afford that. And I know it have to take a lot of money to fix the sidewalks in this town. But something's got to be put into the works. I can contact the ADA. Granted, Paducah has almost every corner has a handicap sidewalk entrance. Some of them are so filled with mud you can't get through them. I've lived here Richard knows, he watched my kids grow up and I watched his grow up. Been in this town almost 40 years. I don't want to see me have to move to a different town because I can't get around in it. And I'm not the only one that has this issue. There's so many people that live not only in Elmwood Court, but Jackson House, W.B. Sanders, and around the rest of the city that are handicapped and can't go where they want to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty, for
Thank you
coming.
so much.
Appreciate that. Okay, next up we have Donald McNeil, Madison Street.
If this meeting goes much longer, you're all going to have to Skype me from my reclining chair at the house. Okay, I got two issues tonight. He brought up the first one, disappointed that the taxpayers are going to have to maintain that park. I think the NAACP is capable of maintaining that park, but since you all brought up it's an entrance to the city, I'm heartened because I live at the entrance to the health park. So y'all can come over to 1334 and start doing my lawn. I live right there at the entrance. Richard knows where I live. I live right there at the entrance. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Okay, that's my one issue with the park. I'm disappointed that we got to spend our taxpayer money to maintain the park. I think it's an insult to the NAACP. They're capable of maintaining it. But if you all want to keep maintaining it, okay. The reason I'm here tonight is last year I heard a lot about the Veterans Day Parade Committee. I tried to find out about how to get on this committee. Y'all aren't very transparent. I went through all the internet on the city to try to find out how to get on this committee. I couldn't find a word on it. So I'd like to know how to get on this committee. I think I'm a worthy candidate. I'm a disabled American veteran. I'm a life member of the DAV here in Paducah, and I think I'd like to serve on the committee if y'all can help me get on it. What do you think?
Process. Do you need to bring that back or?
No, from if you're a member of the DAV and that sort of thing, they each send each one of those organizations sends
So if I talk to my
representatives.
commander at the DAV, I'm a life member?
They would be the ones that put you on that
I'm
committee.
sure he'd be happy to send me over
And
then.
you know exactly where the meetings are because
I know
they're
exactly
right
where
there.
it's at.
And Ms.
Seen 'em.
Johnson will
Okay.
host you at those meetings.
Well, I'm going to look forward to seeing you all on that committee then.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil.
Well, you're welcome. Oh, by the way, just
One
off
more,
the
and
record.
that's it.
One more, okay. The Sons of Confederate Veteran, we own a park on the Dixie Highway, exit 16, and we can't get the county to cut nothing out there. We have to pay for every piece of grass that's cut out there and everything that's pruned out there. And y'all said the NAACP's paying for them flags. We pay over $1,000 for some of our flags out there, but we shouldered the cost of all the maintenance on that park out there and have since the inception of the park. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned.